Hey lads, what's happening?
G'day, mate. How you doing?
Yeah, really well, mate. Really well. How's
Good.
uh, how's 2022 kicked off?
Um, really good.
Very
And
good.
like, obviously, I don't know you well, but like, last year was like, I don't want to be too dramatic, but probably the worst year of my life, or
Yeah,
up there with. And it wasn't even COVID related. Like,
yeah.
I had a gym and it shut down. Had massive fight with my massive split up with my business partner and stuff, and it was just freaking horrible. And you know, money puts so much of a pressure
Oh,
on family, right? You
yeah.
know, and
100.
like being the man of the house and all that shit. Like my wife is a nurse, so
100%.
she
Sorry.
works heaps. So you're right. Yeah, you go do what you need to do,
I know
man.
I'm just going to can that off. I'll put it on Wi-Fi mode, airplane mode. Yeah, sorry, keep going. Yeah, I'm hearing you, man.
Look,
Uh,
and it's been hard, you know, and I guess it's some of the stuff we'll speak about today. Like, you know, I've got some pretty serious mental battles that I go through, and last year they flared up more than ever. Like I'd go to bed every night shaking, like my leg would be fucking shaking, and
yeah,
that was that just became
the
me,
norm.
mate. Like I'd go to bed, say goodnight to my wife, and then the bed would start fucking shaking, you
Yeah.
know, and not for the right reasons. You know, like my it would just be like my leg, and I'd be dreading work. The alarm would wake off, and I'd fucking go to the shower, and I'd be angry, you know, and
Constant state of like that fight, flight, or freeze, really.
100%, man. And you know, now that the gym is gone, whenever I tell people, "Oh, my gym shut down in COVID time," everyone's like, "Oh," like they feel bad for me. But
Probably a blessing.
mate, massive blessing, like
Yeah,
massive
yeah.
blessing. What about you guys?
No,
You guys
it's
went online, right?
yeah, it's been a like just weird time, man. Like we were sort of all guns blazing 20 like sort of 17, 18, 19, and then the start of 2020, and then it was like literally over. Like I remember ringing like someone that does a bit of like our HR stuff, and I just said, is this COVID stuff like legit? Like, do we need to take it seriously? And she's like, yeah, you do. And then literally it was like that Friday, then the Monday the world shut down. It's like, fuck, what are we going to do? And I just remember I was like, kind of like you kind of, everything you worked for has just been ripped out. And then I just remember I was just like, all right, well, what have you done previously in your life when shit hits the fan? Well, we've gone down the avenue of self-medicating and self-destructing, so we don't want to do that. What do you need to do? So I just jumped on the whiteboard and just fucking brain dumped, and then we sort of come up with a bit of a plan, which kind of worked. And then we wrote it out. We had to sort of bunker down the hatches, and then got back to sort of some face to face. The borders opened up, and because a lot of the clients we work with, like they're big business, so they just shut down and don't let anyone on site. And then we got back, and then obviously Omicron come again, so we did another 5 months. But that 5 months were probably full functional digital then. Which look, people say, oh, it's not the same, but I still feel like you're getting something out of it. Like connecting with you today. Like I still think there's something in it. It's not exactly the same, but it does fill a bit of the void, I think, and doing something's better than doing nothing. But now we're getting back to face, but it's now having that blended learning journey where you do the face-to-face, but then you accompany it with the best support infrastructure around the digital stuff they can utilize anywhere, anytime, actionable items that keeps them and helps them hold themselves accountable, but also in supporting others. So I think, yeah, it's definitely been a tough time financially when your core business is face-to-face and you can't do it. But
You
we've,
pivot.
yeah,
You pivot. I mean, I think that's
I've
the biggest thing.
learned a shitload around trying to keep yourself motivated, but supporting others, and it really put into play practicing what you preach. I think like I manage type 2 bipolar disorder every day, and you don't know what you're going to get some days, but when you've got, I won't use the word controls, but the word coping strategy, self-care supports, and you're aware, you can kind of put things in place accordingly, not reactive all the time, but proactively as well. So, but man, I just want to say, I was looking through, obviously, once you asked me on you who you were and your Instagram, and then some of your episodes and that, you find, and you'll agree with this, there's a lot of people in the space kind of pushing an agenda or, yeah, but what you say, like, and some of the stuff you've been saying is unreal, and it's very aligned with what we're about as well. It's It's not about being scared or that stigma and stuff later, but it's what can you put in place to better prepare yourself and things like that. So I absolutely love that, man. I just wanted to say that before we started as well.
Thanks, man. Look, I've suffered from depression for over a decade now, and at first I didn't know what the hell was going on. I'm like, why am I sad all the time? Like, what is this? Like, I was just a kid. I didn't know what this depression thing was. And I've always been, I'm sure you can relate to this, so passionate about helping people. And you hear that all the time. Everyone's like, every personal trainer, everyone in the mental health space, whatever, I'm just passionate about helping people. But helping people lose weight, gain muscle, be able to run better, that's easy, mate. But when you're helping people with their mental health, I mean, I'm preaching to the choir, I know, but it's just an absolute game changer. And when I first kind of announced that I did suffer from depression, this dude that I did have a full head of hair then.
Right, I got the grays on the side.
But like, I had it all, mate. And to watch someone like, for people to hear someone like me suffering, the feedback that I got from people was just next level. I thought, there's something in this. I'm just going to show up as a real person, and from that day forward, I've showed up as a real person.
100%. I keep doing that.
Mate, don't worry about it. These are so laid back. And by the way, we just kind of go, like, we're just going now. I'm not going to do some like fancy intro. I'll edit that in later on.
I'll just turn it off.
You're good. Whatever you need to do. So thank you so much for the, not good enough, mate. No, trust me. If you've been looking through my stuff, you know how laid back I am. But yeah, look, I mean, it's, I guess the biggest reason why I'm having you on today, or asked to have you on, was because of what you're doing. I mean, I'm a fucking diehard Dragon fan.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, mate. Yeah,
we need all of them we can get.
But
I think we'll go all right this year. I really do.
When I first saw the signings, I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, all these other teams are in names, and but then you look at it and you're like, hang on a minute. Like, all around the park, like, we're looking pretty good. And I think the biggest thing is the young guns coming through, man. If we can hang on to some of those, like, far out.
Tyrell Sloan, your Junior Amonis, Jack Bird's probably not a young guy now, but your Zach Lomaxes. And then I think having Burgess and Aaron Woods, like, they're not, say, going to be like a David Fafita, but I really do think that, like, they're going to lay a bloody good platform. They're going to provide some good leadership for a lot of the young guys like the Blake Lorries and things like, because they've been there and done that. We just, and I think, look, we were going good last year until obviously the
fucking barbecue
gate, or whatever they called it. And then, I think that split the club a little bit. And then obviously Jack's whole thing with his court case. So all that's been put to bed. I think we'll have a good year, And I appreciate the having a fan, the Dragons. I think we need it. We've had a few lean years. It's like we've been rebuilding since 2010. And it's
look
22.
So a big thing is, so footy was one reason, obviously, that I wanted to have you on, but the mental health side of things was just like, that's it. And I had, I probably would have reached out anyway, but I had Dallas Stone, who's a good mate of mine, who
he's a legend.
Podcast.
Yeah, we did. What's his To The Point? Yeah,
To The Point podcast. Yeah, that was just such a good, like, real chat. And I mean, this would have been great in person, but as you say, like, what do you do? Like, if we have to go online, we have to go online. Like the stuff that you're doing, with is it your business, by the way?
Yeah, so my wife and I founded it in 2016. But look, it didn't. The plan wasn't to do what we're doing now. If that makes sense. Like, it started off as a bit of an Instagram page, and then it was just about exactly, you kind of go through your journey. You do want to help people, but how do you best do that? I just wanted to share little elements of it and things like that. And look, this was like, I was diagnosed 12 years ago now, where that's what I wanted to do when I finished footy. And I had people within footy go, why would you want to do that? Like, no one's going to listen. Like, you're just going to put yourself out there and get hammered. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's what you think. But I just disregarded that, because as you know, you get that passion. And going to get educated with it was probably one of the best things I did, like going to TAFE and then uni to do social work, where you put the lived experience with the qualifications together. But my wife, she's been there through it all. So being able to, I guess, start something back then But to where it's evolved today, it's not just me and her, it's the team we've got as well. Like Chris Houston, he played at the Knights. He's sort of the heart and soul of MHM in what he does and what he brings with leadership and support, coming from that other angle of being the support network to other people, where we used to actually live together when we were 18 and 19. And that was probably when I was not, I say at the peak of my struggles, but definitely the ups and downs with no understanding, like what you were saying, experiencing and living with depression, but not knowing about it. It's like people will go through a loss or grief or change where it's like the reaction to that is, well, yeah, I am going to feel down and depressed or anxious or whatever it is. But you try and explain depression or anxiety to someone when they're living with it as an illness, it's like you haven't had anything happen to you, but you feel that way anyway. And that's the complicated part of it. And the way you'd experience depression to how I would is different. It's not like if we both broke our leg, our tibia, like halfway through we're going to get surgery, get plaster, 6 weeks on crutches, and the recovery is the same, where managing a mental illness or going through a mental health struggle and managing that, what works for you may not work for me. It might take you 30 years to work through it, where it might take me 5, or, you know what I mean? It's just so different. But because we're in this society, and you talk about this a lot in what you do around social media and expectation and perception and comparison, and like comparison's a thief of joy in some respects. Like if you watch The Rock and he's pumping iron, it gets you up and it gets you going. That's good. That's a good thing. But if that's making you feel worse and in a hole, and I should be doing this, I should be doing that, I should be this, I should be that, it's like, why are you doing that to yourself? You're punishing yourself. Like you got to try and figure out your little recipe, what works for you, and that's going to change over time. But figure out who's going to help you with that recipe, not add fuel to the fire. And then it's like little pieces of a puzzle. You put one piece down where we think we have to build the whole puzzle right here, right now. It's just the Jordan Peterson talks about it in the 12 Rules to Life. Just start by cleaning your room. Start by making your bed and build off that. Like where this instant gratification, we've got to have it all figured out right here, right now. It's just unrealistic.
I love everything you just said there. And it's funny. I'm trying not to nod along like a crazy person, but like everything that you're saying is just too true. And it's just too relatable. Like how many people would you be speaking to that would be, ruining their lives based off, someone else, it's not even their own, their own thing. I mean, I had a chat with an old business coach, and his mate walked into his office and said, fuck, business must be shit. And he goes, what are you talking about? And he goes, mate, look at your desk in your office. It's a fucking pigsty. And he's like, wow. He goes, yeah, it is. Everything's all over the shop. And I noticed that too. It's like when my bed's not made, and, when my front, I'm doing work in the front yard at the moment, and there's shit everywhere. And I walk in today trying to be all like motivated and all right, got a big dog on the podcast and really excited. And then I walk in and there's just like, there's mess. And straight away I start to feel a little bit like, so the importance behind that is major.
And it's a good point. But the other thing as well, like let's, and this is what we say, like cleaning your room and making your bed, it isn't going to solve the world's problems. It's not going to cure the struggling with a mental health issue, but it's going to be a piece of the puzzle that's going to help with the process. So like when I was first diagnosed, and I'm not sure how you feel on your diagnosis, and then the journey that it then puts you on, or the line in the sand that it draws. But for me, and I'm sure we'll talk about my story in detail and yours, but it was a weight of the world lifted off my shoulders. It gave me context, clarity, understanding. Other than having my kids and meeting my wife, it was the best thing that ever happened to me, because I no longer wanted to suffer with the mental illness. And you look at the statistics, 1 in 5 will suffer in any 12-month period. Well, you can manage a mental illness. And yes, there is periods where you suffer, but language is very important. If you're getting drummed into you, if you have a mental illness, you will suffer. You can live a healthy, happy, flourishing life with a mental illness, but it is a process. But for me, after that, went and seen the clinical support, and it was like, I was on turbo to get fixed or to be normal again. And it was like, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, I've got to do that. And I remember my psychologist said, she goes, what where's the finish line? Well, she goes, what are you running towards? Like, what's the rush? And I said, I've got to get better. I've got to get fixed. She's like, you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just going through a tough time. You've got a diagnosis of an illness now. It's a process. There is no finish line. And this process is going to be for the rest of your life. And this process is going to be something where you're going to learn, you're going to grow, you're going to evolve. And that was kind of, our perception is our reality. But once I sort of shifted that perception, it changed the whole way I was approaching it then. And this was early doors, but even to this day, like you were speaking about, like all the things we go through, like whether it's you renovating, your sort of changes in what you do with your business, and you've got kids, family, COVID, finances, all these things, whoever said that that's easy, like they need an uppercut, because that stuff isn't easy. But the thing is, if you try and do all of that at once, it's going to be overwhelming. You're going to feel anxious. You're going to potentially self-medicate, all these things, where let's look at it as a process. And exactly as you said, I'm just going to start with this, and then I'm going to go to that. I'm going to get some support with this. I'm going to talk about this. And that process, when it gets tough for me and you get overwhelmed and you're sort of in a hole, and you've run a business. How many days did you wake up and go, what am I doing this for? I'm over this. I don't need this shit. I'm going to do a 9 to 5. I don't have to deal with this shit anymore. But
that was every day last year. Every day last year. My wife was even saying it to me too.
And then that's that period where you go, I just say to myself, look, this will pass. Okay. It's all part of the process. And a process isn't something that you can look back and just have as a bird's eye view all the time. You've actually got to inject yourself and be part of the process. That's something that I've really found really helps as well.
Yeah. I think we're always, and this is, I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I'm just a dude who really cares. And I try and just preach the right messages. And, you know, I've been through a hell of a lot. The amount of people that reach out to me, and I can help them just by saying, firstly, go and see a therapist. Yep. Secondly, are you sticking to the basics? Are you exercising? Are you eating? And 9 times out of 10, mate, it's fucking not. Like, someone reached out to me the other day and said, Matty, you're inspiring me. My wife's on struggle street at the moment. What do I do? I'm stuck. And I'm like, well, first I get therapy. And then what's her diet like? What's her training? What's her exercise like? And she's like, he's like, she's not training at all. Her diet's absolute shit. And I'm like, well, mate, if we tweak these little baby things, kind of like the cleaning the room thing, I point there because that's where my room is, kind of like the room thing. It's like, I'm not going to clean my room and my depression's going to be gone.
Yeah.
But I'm going to feel a little bit better. And I'm going to like, that's the first accomplishment. Yeah, here we go. Let's rock and roll, you know?
And but that's probably the guidance you give when you had your gym and those, like, you're not going to be able to lose 10 kilos overnight. But here's what you need to do to lose those 10 kilos. No different. You might be here in the red right now, but if you put these things in place, you might be up into the orange the next week, and then the yellow, and then the green. And then you've got your toolkit for when you do slide back down, you know how to get yourself back up. And knowing that you don't have to do that on your own either. In particular as blokes, who told us that if you struggle, you got to do it on your own? You're not allowed to talk about it. Like, you suffer in silence. Who wrote that recipe? Because they need a double uppercut. Not just one.
On the suffering in silence side of things, I mean, it's something I speak about a lot, like putting on the brave face. I mean, I'm sure you did it for years. I did it for years. And, you know, you're someone who, you know, you played over 150 first grade games, you won a premiership, you know, you play one of the toughest positions for the best team on the planet.
The red V, pardon me.
What is it like within the world of footy? You know, you've got these big burly boys. Like, is mental health, I'm sure it would have changed more these days, but what are they doing? Are people like opening up about their mental health? Are clubs putting anything in place for people to open up with their mental health?
Yeah, the NRL is doing a lot. So Paul Heptonstall is the boss of the welfare at the NRL. Look, he was a big part in, I guess, helping me on my journey, but in particular with retirement, but also with MHM. So the NRL are doing quite a lot. There is a welfare and education officer at every single club that has tertiary education, is qualified, and they look after the top 30. And then there's another one that will look after kind of the Harold Maddies, the SG Ball, the Jersey Flag, which is the younger ranks. So their job is and this is only when I was still there, because I actually did that role for a year when I was out of footy, where you do a welfare check and you go through a range of things at the start of the year. You've got processes if they do go through struggles to touch point. And then again, you have another one halfway through, and then at the end of the year, just to get an understanding, a baseline, and put the supports in place. But again, one of the challenges is there is sometimes the support there, but it's about getting the individual to the support is sometimes the challenge, where there is barriers, where it's stigma, not knowing where to start. Are they the right supports? Do you even know that you need support? The judgment, the stereotype. There's all these barriers that stop people seeking support. So I think look, from my understanding when I was there, the NRL are doing a lot. Can they do more? Well, I'm sure with the new literature, the new research and everything that's coming out that they are doing more. And but then again, it does come down to the individual clubs, the individual coaches, and what their processes and systems are in place. Because like sometimes it was the get on with it, get over it and harden up mentality, which when it comes to footy and professional sport, you do need that mentality sometimes, where if you're injured or you're tired or you're hurting or you're not playing so well and all these things, sometimes you do metaphorically and you have to bite down on that mouth guard and push through. But when you go through, it's kind of how you do anything is how you do everything. But when you're going through a mental health struggle and your relationships are being affected and the head noise and the overthinking starting and you're isolating yourself and you're self-medicating and all those things, that's not the time to bite down on the mouth guard and tell yourself to get on with it, get over and harden up. That's the time where it is that vulnerability, the acknowledgement that it's okay to struggle. It's okay to seek support. It's not a sign of weakness. Literally, it just means you want to be doing better than what you are. But you get this conditioning, and everyone is different. You look at your upbringing and the way that's conditioned, how your parents and your family look at mental health. Like people you come across, they're like, oh, my family said that mental illness isn't real in our family. And it's like, well, imagine being a young person struggling, knowing you can't go to your parents because it's not real. Well, like that, it's so heartbreaking and so sad. But I look at back in 2010 when I did hit rock bottom, and that was the year I was diagnosed. But for me, I was shit scared of what people would say, how they'd treat me, whether I get picked in the side or not, all these different things, whether they were real or not, they were real to me. So I did just suffer in silence. But a lot of my stuff stemmed from growing up. Like I grew up in domestic violence, physical violence, and things like that with my father, which I was drummed into me exactly that: harden up, you're soft, and all these different things. And those traumas and things you go through, I just swept under the carpet for 22 years of my life. I pretended like they weren't there. I pushed them to the far reaches of my mind, and that was the inner dialogue. Don't be soft, harden up, be a man. You got to do this. If you want to be like, you want to play at the top, you got to do this and all that. But all that stuff was still there. But I didn't realize how much it was affecting me. So I'd be up, I'd be down, I'd be up, I'd be down. It was kind of a bit of a running joke with a lot of the teams and the players I played with. Because my nickname was Bubsy. Where's Bubsy on the roller coaster today? Is he at the top or the bottom? If I was at the top, it was like, he's the best, he's fun, he's happy, he's training well, playing well. If I was at the bottom, it's like, I couldn't even have a conversation with someone. I'd play poorly, train poorly. I'd be blowing up my relationships. Someone would look at me the wrong way. And it was just a recipe for disaster. But I didn't know about this. I didn't know. What did we at school? You learn that health is just merely the absence of disease. Like that's all you really got taught. So I was kind of like fighting a battle with my arms tied behind my back and a blindfold on. And it was just like a dodgem card, just going everywhere. And it was just a bit of a disaster. But you kind of get into footy, you get that sense of identity, purpose and belonging. You got a goal that you're working towards, you're training every day. So you kind of, you've got all these elements that we were just talking about previously that help you manage yourself and things like that. But it come to a bit of a head for me in 2010. I actually ruptured my Achilles tendon in round 20. We were the favourites to win the premiership, which we went on to win the premiership. I'd started every game, playing the best footy in my career. But then that injury happened, and it's a 12-month rehab on a ruptured Achilles. So I actually missed the grand final. And for me, as a young kid, that was challenging, because that's where you play your career and you didn't feel part of it, which I know now I was a part of it. That was more the ego talking. But for me, I used to blame everything on my past. If something went wrong or the Achilles, it was like, oh, I had a shit upbringing. I don't have to and I just blamed it and denied it and projected it. But when that injury happened, I had to get surgery. You weren't part of the team. It was kind of like the carpet got ripped out from underneath you. But for me, I already had a chip on my shoulder. I hated the world, myself, and everyone in it anyway. And then that just added fuel to that fire. But what happened was, it was the stuff from my past, my upbringing, the domestic violence, the drug abuse, the shit that I seen and went through and never acknowledged, never processed, never spoke about. At the time, I had no idea how it come back and hit me like an absolute ton of bricks. I do understand it now, and then that just put me into the red, and I spiraled out. You get surgery to take away, you take painkillers with surgery to take away the physical pain. I began to take the emotional pain, not taking what you prescribe, way more than that. But then I was like mixing it with illicit drugs, with alcohol, with isolation, with anger. And it was, look, in the interim at work, because you do escape reality, it does numb the pain because you're off your head. But that's what's all still there. And for me, over a 6-8 month period, it put me in the worst place I'd ever been in, to the point where I almost didn't end up here. But I wouldn't seek support because I thought it was a sign of weakness. I didn't think as a man you're supposed to do that. So again, just suffered in silence, pushed the closest people to me away, didn't talk about it, and just self-sabotaged, self-medicated which kind of, that was a lot of stuff that I seen growing up. Not that I'm blaming that, because I'm very accountable for my actions and my behaviors, but I didn't realize, I guess, the point that it was having not just on myself, but the people around me. I had a conversation with my mum, and she sort of said to me, you're going down the same path as your father. And the person I was trying to break that cycle with, and try and be that better version, I didn't even see it. I had the blinkers on. When you go through that struggle, it's really hard to have perspective, because it's hard just to get through the next minute, let alone the next whatever period. So I had the blinkers on. I didn't realize how much I was not just hurting myself and impacting myself, but the people that I so-called cared about. And that did shift my perception. But I still didn't go and seek support after that conversation. It definitely planted a seed. And the next one I had was with Wayne, my coach at the time, who's a mentor, a good friend of mine, where he could see I was off. I wasn't my normal self. I wasn't my usual base and he was worried. But because he's such a good man manager, he just didn't think, it's because he's injured, he'll be right. And he actually checked in with me and started the conversation and asked how I was traveling. Was there anything he could do to support me? And it was that point in time that kind of the mask come off, and I broke down and shared stuff with him from my past, my upbringing, that I'd never shared with anyone. And from that, it was like you could kind of breathe again. But there was no answers or solutions with that. But what it was, talking to him about that it was okay to struggle, but it was also okay to seek support. And then that was that point in time where one of the hardest questions we get asked in this space is, how do you help someone that doesn't want to help themselves? And you can't force someone to seek support or make a change unless they're in crisis. Everyone needs to go through their own stimulus, their own catalyst, their own event that gets them to that point of, look, I need, you can get to the door, but you have to walk through that door yourself. And for me, it was those conversations. And that's why our slogan at the mental health movement is starting the conversation, because exactly as we're having now, that could be the difference between changing someone's perception, changing their life, saving someone's life. And from there, that's when we booked in with the Black Dog Institute up in Randwick in Sydney. They specialise in the research, the diagnosis and the treatment of mood disorders, depression. I spent about 6 hours up there with a clinical psych and a psychiatrist. Went through a range of different things. It was definitely challenging. I'd never done anything like that, but they made it very achievable. And at the end of that day, I was given a formal diagnosis in type 2 bipolar disorder. And as I said earlier, it was one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because it did draw that line in the sand. It shifted my perception. I wanted to learn to better manage it. And that's where it started me on my journey. And it's something, a journey that I'd never change. You look back, I wouldn't change any of that stuff. I've had people ask me, would you have played in that grand final, but you're not doing what you're doing now? And I would miss that grand final every day of the week, because that was part of the process, as we were talking about. And I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if I hadn't been through that. So I'm very grateful that I went through those things. Don't get me wrong, I wasn't grateful at the time. But that's kind of where it's, got me to today.
Wow. Wow. Like with these podcasts, they go a whole bunch of different directions. So
that's the best. That's the best thing about it.
Totally. So like I've got some notes in front of me. Sometimes they're question, answer. And the amount of times I wanted to jump in there, Dan, and just ask and just cut in and just ask
ask away.
I will. But everything that you were saying is either something that I can relate to or something that I wanted to ask you anyway. Something that you mentioned in Dallas's podcast was it's not about creating a better player, it's about creating a better person, which was said by Wayne Bennett, your coach. And for those listening who don't know Wayne Bennett, arguably the best coach of all time. Like, he's just an absolute, I couldn't imagine how great it was, you know, being playing, what, 3 years, 2 or 3 years you were coached by him?
Yeah, 2009, 10, and 11. Yeah.
How important is it to have role models in your life like that? Because growing up, like, I had a similar upbringing to you, not from my old man, but from someone else. And it was my stepdad. Fuck it. And the biggest insult. Can you hear me?
Yeah, perfect.
The biggest insult I can be given is, "Oh, you're acting like your stepdad," because I'm like, that's the fucker that I just never ever want to. I don't never want to see him again. You know, he fucked me up, but it means that I'm the strong person that I am today. So, like, I can relate so heavily to a lot of the stuff you just said. But sorry, how important are these role models in your life? Like, not for you personally, but for everyone. Like, if we're playing footy, if we're fucking working, if we're training, for whatever, how important is it to have a role model?
It is, because you don't have that. Well, you look at, like, young puppies. Like, I've got 3 dogs, and you look at them when they grow up, they follow the older ones, and they get shown their behaviors. Or as human beings, you got someone that you can go to for guidance or ask or whatever it is, where you don't necessarily have to go through all the shit to get there. You get a little bit of a leg up, which is so important. But it's also you look at the hero and the hero's journey. Why do you think Marvel's so successful? Why do you think all these Superman and Batman and all this? Because it's a hero. It's someone to aspire to. It's someone that's there to support you in your time of need, this hero's journey. So role models are so very important. And something probably really hit home with me was when I had my son. And when he was born, I remember my wife and I, we talk quite openly, but I don't know how far after it was he was born, I sort of said to her, I said, what if he has bipolar? And she looked at me, didn't blink, and just said, well, he's got the best person to help him through it. And that kind of just was like, holy shit. So all the shit I'd been through, all the mistakes I've made, all the fuck ups I've done, everything like that has not been in vain. That's now I get to pass the baton the right way onto my daughter, onto my son, and to the people we get to work with, where you go through change, challenge, and adversity, because that is, in essence, part of the human experience. Part of becoming and being resilient is going through struggle. But it's then, how do you utilize that to help people within your family, help others, and serve others? And there's nothing more admirable, I feel, not just serving yourself, but serving your family, serving the people in your community and the people around you, as you are doing with your podcast and the work that you're now dedicated your life to. So in essence, you're being that role model. So they are very important. And the thing about it as well is sometimes we have people in our lives that call themselves role models, but they're not the best of role models because they're in essence serving themselves. So it's just really important to make sure that your role models or your support networks are people that are non-judgmental, the people that care, that listen, that don't dismiss your struggles, that don't try and tell you or fix what you should be doing, that are there to help you get your hands on the steering wheel with empowerment, not disempowerment. And if you have those people in your life, that it doesn't matter what you go through, you're going to be able to work through it.
Yeah. Wow. This is just huge stuff that you're dropping today. I want to speak about I could just speak about footy with you for, as long as you want. But I think we've covered that quite well. I want to speak about mental health movement, and in the background here, you've got your mental health continuum.
Yeah.
I think that's very interesting and very relatable to so many people, especially before when you kind of mentioned, what was your nickname? Like when they said, what's he going to be like?
Roller coaster.
Roller coaster. Yeah. And it's the same thing with so many people with a mental illness. It's kind of like, like my wife has to deal with me, right? And it's like, fuck, what am I going to get today? This warm, bubbly, like energetic legend, or this guy that's fucking angry and, you know, dismissive and whatever. So can you explain
Yeah.
this
So,
mental health continuum?
yeah, I think one of the most fundamental things I've seen after being diagnosed, but then studying at TAFE and then university, but a lot of the stuff, and it's definitely evolved, and we are getting it right now. But where a lot of the stigma comes from is people associate mental health and mental illness as the same thing, where they're not the same thing. They're on a continuum. But it's as simple as this. If you have a brain in your head, you have a mental health. It's as simple as that. And our mental health is how we think, act, and feel. Okay. And it affects our ability to be happy, our ability to maintain meaningful relationships, our ability to work, our ability to cope with what life throws at us. We all have a mental health. The better we look after our mental health, the better we look after ourselves, the better we can support others. Okay. And we can work towards being a better version of ourselves. Mental illness is a little bit different. Okay. A mental illness is, it's a diagnosis. Okay. And it's an impairment in your cognitive function. So it's an impairment in the way you think, act, and feel. But we all have impairments in our cognitive function from time to time. But when it's diagnosed by a mental health professional, a mental health GP, okay, a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist, so many of us jump on this and self-diagnose or diagnose other people. It's like, well, if you're not a qualified professional, you shouldn't be going around diagnosing people. So it's also understanding that difference is really, really important, okay? How do people look after something if they don't even think it affects them? We do an activity in workshops. What is mental health? And people will say it's depression, it's anxiety. No, they're mental illnesses. So understanding the difference between the two is really important. When we look at our physical health, how do we check in on that? Well, we can jump on a set of scales, we can get an x-ray, blood test, all these different tangible things where it's like, oh, yeah, I understand that, I get that. To check in with your mental health, there's not really anything out there unless you go see the professionals and you do the different depression and anxiety scales and things like that. But they're diagnostic tools for the mental health professionals. To check in with your mental health on a daily basis, there's not really anything out there. So we developed what we call our mental health continuum. Very clear, simple, and effective. We use the traffic light system because our brains are synonymous with that, but it gives us something tangible. And when we've got something tangible, we can check in. My 5-year-old son understands this. Not necessarily the elements about it, but the colors and where you're at and what that means. So on the top, we've got what we call the indicators. So they're the changes that we can identify within ourselves or the changes we can identify in someone else. They're the signs and symptoms and behaviors and stuff, and they're different depending on where you are on the continuum. On the bottom, we have what we call the actions. Okay, so they're the elements you can put in place to support you or help support someone else, depending on where you are. So in the green, we have healthy. The yellow, we have sliding. Okay, the orange, we have struggling, and the red, we have ill. We move up and down this continuum every second, minute, hour of every day. Well, why do we move down here? Well, because the shit we go through in life isn't easy. Finances, you move down. Relationships, kids, work, COVID, Omicron, vaccinations, all these media, social media, work, they slide us down the continuum. But having the awareness and the understanding, okay, I slid down the continuum, identified those indicators. What can I put in place to help myself slide back up or to manage where I am at on that continuum? And that's where it comes back to that self-care, the mindset, the coping strategies, the support networks to be able to help yourself slide back up this continuum. Now, the thing about it is though, in Australia, the literature is crystal clear. People that slide down into the orange, 54% of people that go through a mental health struggle or experience mental illness do not seek support, do not access treatment, do not make the changes. They suffer in silence. Okay, so if we've got more than half the Australian population suffering in silence, you can start to see now why individuals are sort of staying down there or can be struggling. But if we don't put anything in place when we are down here, the probability of sliding into the red, it does increase. Okay, and that's why literature is also crystal clear. Taking a proactive approach over a reactive approach, it does lead to better outcomes. But the thing is, it's not a perfect world. It's not a cookie cutter approach. If you do slide down here, that's okay. But that's where we do need to, as you say, link into that clinical professional support. Start with the little 1%ers, and you just might just go up here in little increments. It doesn't have to be solving or fixing the world's problems. We also use this. People, a lot of the question we may get asked is, how do you know if you are struggling, or how do you know if you do need to seek that support? So using this continuum, the clinical professionals work off, if you find yourself in the orange and it's been a longer period of 3 weeks, okay, and what you usually put in place is not helping you slide back up, that's the indicator. It's time to take action and seek that professional support, put a sort of a wellbeing action plan in place, and know you don't have to do it on your own, okay, to be able to help you slide back up. I was in the red for 22 years and I had no idea. The stigma, the stereotype, the judgment, all these things. But I still slide down into here. But having a tool like this and then having some education and awareness around it, it's not about stopping yourself sliding down. It's just about being better prepared, better supported, better educated to be able to better manage yourself on this continuum. Now, this is not a diagnostic tool. It is just a self-awareness tool that you can use to check in with yourself, depending on where you're at, and then helping you have that self-awareness of what you can put in place to help yourself better manage yourself on it.
And it's just so, it seems so simple. Like it seems like you've done it just so simply, like reading through it now. I'll post this on my Instagram for those listening, and you'll see it on YouTube for those who are watching. But it is just, it's so basic, but just so easy. I guess this will help people. One thing I did want to ask you was, obviously you help people with their mental health, right? How much detail do you go into helping people help other people with their mental health?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. One thing I left there, you can see up the top there, the different types of supports, depending on where you are, that's recommended. So when you're in the green and the yellow, it's that self-care, the social support, family, friends, community. When we slide down into the orange, it is a little bit of a different kettle of fish. It is more challenging. So that's where it's in conjunction with this support. It's also the professional and clinical support as well. In terms of what we do at MHM, we do support individuals in the workplace, in the community, across the whole continuum, whether it is just going through a mental health struggle, or you're in the green but you want to be doing even better, or that you are maybe potentially struggling with a mental health struggle, or you've just had a mental illness diagnosis or a mental health disorder diagnosis. So we support it across the whole end of the continuum. But understanding that it's just, depending on where you are, and then being able to put those people into support. But exactly as you said earlier, I think I've seen a lot of emphasis is put on the person that's struggling, and the finger pointing, and you need to admit you've got a problem. You need to admit you need help. And it's like, you know yourself, when you've been through that struggle or you're going through that struggle, you've got your tunnel vision on it. It's hard to just get up and brush your teeth and have a shower, let alone, I'm going to admit. The other thing is, why are we using a language you need to admit you've got a problem? You haven't done anything wrong. What, you're in trouble because you're struggling? No, we need to acknowledge is the right language we need to use. I acknowledge I'm going through a struggle. I acknowledge I need some support, and I acknowledge I'm not really sure what I need to do. So I think there's too much emphasis just put on the person going through the struggle, whereas exactly as you said, it's a bit of a two-way street. It's not a one-way street where you've got the people going through the struggle, but you've also got the people who are supporting the people going through the struggle. And I think the way in which, and Brene Brown talks a lot about this, where support networks, we've got the best intentions, but we want to fix and solve people's problems. We want to be able to say one thing that's going to make everything A-okay, where, let's be honest, is what one person's going to say, is it going to make it all A-okay? We're just silver lining it. But in essence, you're dismissing the struggles that person may be going through, as opposed to acknowledging it. So instead of saying, oh, you got nothing to worry about. You got a good house, a good car, a good job. You're going well. You got nothing to be depressed about. Like, that's just dismiss that whole person's struggle. And when you're that person struggling, like, well, fuck, I'm not talking to you again. Whereas if they said, look, I'm not really sure what to say, but I just want to acknowledge how hard it is for you right now, and I want you to know that I'm here to support you. Do you see the difference in the language?
Totally. Yeah. How do we get people to understand that better? The people who just don't understand mental illness. I think that, like we've spoken about a few times in this chat, someone is heavily struggling, but they've got it all. How do we get people to understand what mental illness really is, rather than just, saying cheer up, toughen up?
Yeah, I think, look, it's definitely hearing from people with lived experience, and that power of story, because the power of story cuts through the bullshit, the stigma, the stereotype, and that relates to people, because everyone has a story. Okay, everyone has a story. You've been through change, challenge, adversity. You may be going through it right now, and stories is what's been passed on over generations for thousands and thousands of years, of cultures, of religions, and stories connect. So definitely hearing people with lived experience and that power of story. But it's exactly that. If we want behavioural change, okay, a story will get you so far. It'll motivate, it might shift perception. But if we want behavioral change, it has to happen through adult learning, through education, through training, through resources done consistently over time. And that's what we're trying to achieve at the mental health movement. It's not just trying to help people build resilience and better manage their own mental health or mental illness and link them to the support. It's also trying to educate and train individuals and resource individuals, being that support network, so that they can better support. And that's the thing. If we have better supporters around us, do you think more than 54% of people would be seeking support when they're going through a struggle? Because it's more of a conducive environment. They feel trusted. They feel like they're being cared about. They feel like they're being listened to. So it's definitely that two-way street. But if we want the changes that, and look, I look back from 2010 to now, we have come so far in this space. We've come so bloody far.
Absolutely.
But
yeah, absolutely.
With the education that's out there, with the resources that are out there, with people like yourself that are out there, there's still more work to be done. And it's again, we don't necessarily always have to look at the big picture or where we're heading. Okay, we have an understanding of it. What do we want to do? We want to create mentally healthy, supportive individuals, workplaces, communities, sporting clubs, friendship circles. That's the goal. Okay, well then how do we reverse engineer that? What do we need to do? Well, where we're at now, we've done a great job with awareness. Definitely. We've brought mental illness and mental health out of the dark ages. It's definitely something that's acknowledged now. We're starting to get a greater understanding, but now we need to move into the education, the training, aligned with what the literature and the best practice and the clinical validation is, not just people's opinions, but actually what the research tells us. And we'll just keep evolving, like the caterpillar becomes the butterfly. We'll keep evolving as individuals, as collectives in friendships and families and communities. But it's a collaborative approach. Okay, it's not just all on the people that are struggling. It's a collaborative approach.
And I love your work, and I can just tell how passionate you are about this. And you know,
apologies for anyone. It feels like I'm coming through the screen, but it's just how I
fucking go for it. Well, like they're used to me talking, I'm swearing and yelling and all this kind of stuff, but you're clearly so passionate about it. And like you said before about being grateful for what you've been through, like if you never were diagnosed with bipolar, or if you never had type 2 bipolar, I was going to say diabetes, this would never, you'd never have this, you'd never have this passion and this drive to help people. Yeah. How do people get involved, and how can you help people?
Yeah, look, you can jump and check out our website at mentalhealthmovement.com.au. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, just under Mental Health Movement. But look, if you're you're a workplace or a small business or a community organization or anything where you're looking to take your first step in terms of creating that mentally healthy, supportive environment. Definitely that's what we can help you with. We can assess the workplace or the organization or whatever it is, understand what the challenges are, the contributing factors where you're at, and then build out a plan that's according to those needs, then implement that plan, support that plan, and then see where you're at and things like that. So we absolutely love what we do, but everything we do is aligned with best practice and clinical validation. We've got clinical people in our team. We've got researchers with the University of Wollongong. So you can be ensured that it's going to be done properly. But I think what we do as well is we connect, and it's exactly that. It's connecting. It's showing vulnerability. It's acknowledging. It's not just coming in and hitting you with clinical terms and stats. We're very big on that power of story and sharing and getting people involved and hearing their struggles or hearing the things that they've been through and then linking that with the I guess what the education and the training and stuff like that. But we've helped organisations like junior or local rugby league teams or small little real estate businesses or things as big as Blue Scope Steel or Sydney Trains. So it's kind of everyone's got a mental health. Mental illness does not discriminate, can affect anyone at any time. So our goal and objective is just to try and get what we deliver in our mental health workplace blueprint to as many organisations, people as possible. And what have we done now? We've just ticked over 360,000 Australians we've worked with from 150 different organisations just in that 6 years that we've been working. So it's we're very proud of what we've been able to do, but we're very grateful and thankful for the people that we've been able to work with or been able to touch. And
Well, full credit to you, my friend. That's just like, again, the amount of times I've just gone, wow, that's impressive. You're changing this world, my friend, and I'm just so grateful for today, and I'm so grateful for what you're doing. I'm going to try and my old man and I are going to try and come down to a few games in the Gong. So I'll hit you up, maybe grab a beer or something.
Yeah, come down to the office, meet the team, go grab a feed or something, and then watch the Red V. Hopefully, get a W.
This is going to be a good year. It has to be a good year.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks so much, Jan. I appreciate it, brother. I could have spoken to you for days, but
no, thanks for having me, legend. And yeah, everyone out there, keep looking after yourselves, looking after each other, and let's keep starting that conversation.
See you, brother.
See you, mate.